Fantastic.
Saddle up.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee. Members of the committee, could you please identify yourselves?
Bobby Fan.
Other board members, could you please identify yourselves?
Tom Burgunder.
Joe
Steve
Totten.
McClinney.
Joe
Ed
Totten.
Sorry,
Jen
Joe.
Liptak.
Senator Williams.
The minutes from January 2026 meeting of the committee has been circulated. Unless there's any questions or corrections, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We will now hear a presentation from Amy Such.
Good morning. Good morning, committee and board members and stakeholders. My name is Amy Silberman. I'm the Chief Development Officer here. And my first update this morning is our quarterly update on the PRTX University Line Bus Rapid Transit Project. As a reminder, the construction is underway. This project is broken into two construction phases. Phase 1 is complete. It was complete last summer in downtown. Phase 2 in Uptown and Oakland are continuing. They're about 30% through that construction, and that will continue throughout the remainder of this calendar year. We have had a slower winter as expected. Of course, it's harder for our teams to get work, especially subsurface and concrete type work, done in the colder months. And then, of course, the snowstorm really put a pause on progress there for a week or two, but we are back underway. Our contraflow bus lane that we presented in November at the last quarterly update, the contraflow bus lane in Oakland was closed in January. Passengers have moved over to Forbes Avenue in the outbound direction. That transition went pretty well. And we have begun, or are beginning this week actually, in earnest, the construction on that contraflow lane, which, as a reminder, will eventually become a protected two-way bicycle facility with all bus traffic outbound being on Forbes Avenue. So at my next quarterly update, I'm hoping we can provide a high-level timeline for how we're moving through the next year or so to get to a point where this project is complete, which is very exciting to start talking about. By my summer update, I'm hoping to provide a bit more of a detailed timeline with our plans, high level for when construction will wrap up, when we will begin the service sort of in earnest, and the ribbon cutting as you were. So that's exciting, and we'll know much more as we get through the spring season of construction on how progress is going this year. So one topic on the Bus Rapid Transit project that we have not focused on for far too long, as the real focus has been getting into and under construction for this project, is how riders will ultimately pay their fares. So as a reminder, back in the planning phases of this project, we always anticipated having some level of all-door boarding. That's pretty typical on Bus Rapid Transit projects to allow things to speed up, allow us to get people on and off the buses faster and get people on their way. However, we were never very specific about exactly what that process was going to be. So we've had an internal team that has been looking at and evaluating different options. We did, in the construction project, plan to have validators be able to be installed in stations should they be needed. So we were keeping that option open to us in the construction. And so we have looked at primarily 4 different options for the corridor. The first is front door only, just like we do now on bus. You pay when you board the front door, whether you're paying cash or card or phone. The next is all door boarding, pay as you board. This would be still allowing normal use at the front door, but also having validators for phones and cards to be able to tap at middle and back doors. We have all door boarding where you would pay in the station area, and there's 2 different ways to do that on a BRT. One option is to gate the station area, similar to what you might ride on a rail station or something, where you actually go through a turnstile after paying. And then the last option being an open paid zone. There's two pictures of open paid zones on the slide here, one in Seattle and one in Prague. The one in Seattle is showing an area where you'd tap your card or your phone or other payment method as you enter a light rail station platform. The one at the bottom is showing a bus rapid transit station in Prague, where there are bright yellow validators, kind of like a gated entry, but not actually gated, just telling you where to tap before you enter a certain area. And then it would be expected if you were waiting beyond inside that area that you will have already paid. So we've been looking at all of these. The first option, which is our current fare payment method, is slow. So that is the biggest drawback of that method. Obviously, we all know and use it well, so easy to understand. It has some pros, but the biggest con being that it is not as fast as we could be. All door boarding, both in a gated and ungated method, are very difficult, if not impossible, for this BRT system. And the reason being this BRT system is very much within the urban fabric of Oakland, uptown, and downtown. These are not separated BRT stations that are on their own busway, for example, like our East and West busways. These are right smack in the middle of sidewalks, in some cases very narrow sidewalks. We have an image of the slide on screen showing our Wood Street PRTX station, which is about a block from this office, and it is a very busy area. We've got people walking through. And so there's really no space to do a gated zone at all. That is almost physically impossible for many of these stations. But even having an open paid zone, because we're mixing with pedestrians trying to walk through these areas, was really not going to be feasible and not a sort of obstruction that we wanted to create in these downtown and Oakland areas with so many people. So our best choice for moving forward that our internal group has recommended is to move forward with all door boarding. So let's move on to what that is and what that looks like a little bit more detail. So it enables anyone using the front door of the bus to still be able to do so in the way that they do now. So this is particularly helpful for accessibility and equity. We know there are some users who are going to pay cash and continue to pay cash on this corridor. That's a very small percentage of riders, about 5%, but there will still continue to be those folks, so they can still pay in cash if they want to at the front door. It also means if you needed the assistance from the bus operator to help you get your card out or something, if you have a physical disability, you can still get that assistance from the operator. But it does allow folks using a card or their phone to tap and pay to be able to use the middle or back doors to speed everybody up and get the bus moving. Also allows us to have those validators without having them in the sidewalk area, so we have less congestion and some of those busy sidewalks. The main drawback to this proposed payment method is potential for fare evasion. So for people to board the middle or back door and not pay their fare. This does happen occasionally at front doors too, right? Maybe someone forgot their card or their cash that day, or maybe a fare box is not working. But broadly, it does have a higher risk, and what we do see in other cities is that there is somewhat more fare evasion when you allow for middle and back door boarding. So what we've been doing and will continue to do is we audit fare evasion quite closely, and we will begin doing so with a higher frequency, especially on this corridor if we implement this all-door boarding. And we will keep an eye on that fare evasion, work with our communications teams around marketing to make sure people really understand how and that they still need to pay their fare and tap that card. And if it becomes a problem, our backup would be to revert back to the regular bus payment method of front door only boarding. So in terms of fare evasion, I mentioned that we already look at this and audit it. We look at it on both bus and light rail. So we started in earnest doing a broader look at this last year in 2024, fall of 2024. So we now have 2 years worth of data for bus and light rail. So for bus in 2024, we have a team of service development associates that go out and audit all sorts of things for us in the field and measure things. So this is one of their tasks. They went out in 2024 for bus and noted about a 9% fare evasion. And then on light rail, which is a little bit more of a all-door boarding type situation where maybe you don't have an operator right at the door that you're expected to pay. So perhaps a little bit more akin to what we might expect on a bus rapid transit system, is slightly higher at around 14%. So overall, an average for our system of about 10% evasion. They then went out and measured again this past fall in 2025, and the rates for both modes did come down slightly. Now, this might be a situation where the first year that they did it, nobody knew what they were doing. Maybe the operators didn't know what they were doing either, what they were measuring. And maybe once they found out what they were measuring, some of those operators were paying a little bit more attention when they saw them riding the buses. So this just could be a difference in terms of how we're sampling and the environment. So I wouldn't necessarily conclude from that all of a sudden more people were paying their fares, but it is helpful as a moment in time for us, and we will continue auditing and looking at this annually. And then when and if we move forward with all-door boarding for the university line, would do so with greater frequency, so that we can really keep an eye on the trend. So the more important thing here with those field audits is, what is our trend? Are we trending upward? Are people generally still doing what they're supposed to do in terms of being honest and paying that fare? We are, from what we can tell, this is not a number that many cities publish, probably for good reason. But from what we can tell, we have very low fare evasion rates on bus compared to other cities, especially some of the bigger cities that have done more robust studies on this topic. So San Francisco in 2024 published about a 20% bus fare evasion rate. WMATA in DC, about a 34% fare evasion rate in 2022. And then MTA in New York City, a 22% bus fare evasion back in 2019. So this is a challenge for some cities. It's not a challenge that we have faced historically here in the Pittsburgh region. Our bus riders are really honest and really great at paying their fares, and we hope that we can continue to reap the benefits of that through the BRT project, with being able to offer all-door boarding, and hope that that honest behavior continues so we can speed everybody up, which also does save us operating money too in the long run. So our next step on this, after sharing it with all of you today and answering any questions about it, is that by our next quarterly update to come to you with a more detailed timeline of how and when we would roll both this new fare payment method as well as the broader project out to the public in 2027. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Is there any questions?
Yes, this is Bobby. Thanks, Amy, for this presentation, and I'm excited to see different types of boarding with the BRT project. And I have two different questions. I was curious if there was still a plan to have a kind of fair ambassador team out when there's with the unveiling of this new boarding system. And the other question is more about looking at the service changes, upcoming service changes. I in looking at the routes, it appears that there's some conflicting scheduling with the. This is not exclusively just the changes related to Oakland, but there appear to be service running on the Fifth Avenue bus lanes that that were closed as of December. And then I think there's, at least to me, it looks like bus stops that are missing, such as like Forbes and Shenley. So I think there's some other things, and I can follow up over email, but I don't know if there's an explanation for that discrepancy.
Sure, thanks. So let me start with the fare ambassadors question, which is that I don't have a conclusive answer for you on that today. We have had some internal discussion around that. We don't have a decision on that yet. But broadly, if we did not have fare ambassadors, we are not proposing any different level of fare validation from what we would do today. So So we will not necessarily, and I shouldn't say we won't necessarily, we will not have staff who are riding the buses, checking to see if you have paid your fare when you boarded, right? So whether or not we have some sort of helpers that are out in the field, just helping people understand, I think is a separate question that we don't have the answer to yet, but I'll make sure that we get you one. But in terms of enforcement, we are not planning any active enforcement of this new fare payment policy. So it would be on your honor that you've tapped when you got on the middle or back door. And we will track that through those fare evasion counts. And if we find it to be becoming a problem, we will revert back to the slower method. We will not have folks, going around riding the buses to see if you paid your fare when you got on the middle or back door. So I'll get back to you on the fare ambassador piece from more of a customer help perspective at a future meeting. We'll make sure we get that for you for the next quarterly update or earlier. On the service change piece, I do not have an answer on the Fifth Avenue. We've not heard about that. I'm looking at Chuck as well. So we will look into that for you to make sure that we don't have an error in schedules that needs to be adjusted. And as well as the Forbes and Shenley bus stop, we'll make sure that we are ready for an answer on that one as well. I know that one has had some ins and outs with the, I think that's the Hillman Library location. So for construction, I think we've had some time when it was out of service for a couple of years and then it was back in service, and there might be another reason that it's out of service again, but we will be sure to get you answers on those two pieces as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I can also follow up over email, but with the ambassador program, I personally think if it's possible, it seems like a good thing to have at least initially, and I think that could set it up for more success, but I understand that their staffing might not be possible for that.
Good morning. This is member fan. This is Catherine. Thank you for the input. And those are the same observations that we were looking at for starting was, did we want a fare ambassador to be a person at the station helping folks figure out all-door boarding, helping folks figure out getting from, one spot to another? Or did we want the perception of a fare ambassador to be, here's someone who's going to walk up and talk to me exclusively about my fare, and that's going to be the conversation? And overall, where we landed was really for this person to be more of a station ambassador, a service ambassador that would come up and talk to you about, hey, do you have questions? You look a little lost. Can I help you? And then segue into if we had any reasons to be talking about fare. Again, with the fare evasion rates that we have, we realistically are at the point that to increase fare collection, we'd be making a disproportionate investment in how we are checking fares, how we are deploying resources throughout the system to try to make it more difficult for folks to get on. So we landed that we didn't need that fare, but we did land that, especially as we're getting new services out there, whether it is our customer service group or different components from our ATU workforce, that, having folks out there more than the few days before and after that our service planning team traditionally serves, that it would make sense for us to have folks out there in that. So I think that was a really long way of saying you're right. And I apologize for taking so long.
No, in general, I think the more visibility customer services, the better also. So thank you.
Sure thing.
Does any other board members have any questions for Ms. Silverman? If not, we will hear another presentation from Ms. Silverman she's going to update this committee with an overview of the state of good repair program and construction projects for the calendar year of 2026 through 2027.
All right, thank you. And hello, everybody again. So switching topics, although I guess PRT is also a big construction project, but we're going to focus more now on state of good repair, more specifically in our construction world. So as a recap, this is not new, but just to remind us all, we do have a large infrastructure system here at PRT. We have busways, we have light rail, we have bridges, we have tunnels. all sorts of things to keep, moving, keep us moving, keep us in a state of repair. Our current backlog of state of good repair, this has been an ongoing challenge over the decades, right? But any agency is going to have a regular amount of state of good repair need. Ours is quite large, however. We've never really quite been able to get that backlog fully addressed. It's about $2 billion, of which about $1.8 billion is unfunded. There's a pie chart on the slide here kind of showing us the broad breakdown of where that backlog sits. So we have a good chunk sitting in facilities needs, a good chunk sitting in our light rail system. Our light rail system in particular is aging and is expensive and has a lot of state of good repair need. Our busways also have some to a lesser extent. A big chunk of this backlog is our need for new light rail vehicles, which are beyond their useful life. We have some state of good repair backlog in park and rides, a small amount, and then a sizable amount in bridges and tunnels. So this need grows, on average at about $80 million a year, and then we tend to invest about 100, maybe a little more than $100 million a year in all of our infrastructure. So not just state of good repair, but new things or better things as well. And so as you can see, there's a little bit of a push-pull there with we aren't really quite able to make this $2 billion pie much smaller year to year. So we do try. Our team does a fantastic job of getting through an amazing amount of infrastructure work on an annual basis. But that will continue to be an ongoing challenge for us into the future. So with this backlog becomes impacts to riders. Right? So we have to close parts of the system, especially on the rail system. Rails don't tend to detour very well, unlike buses. So it is much more disruptive for us to have to do construction projects on the light rail system to keep us in a state of repair. 2024 and 2025 were really big years for us in the construction world from a perspective of a rail rider. So of course, in 2024, we had the red line closure. And then in 2025, we had two major projects. One was the downtown Plinth replacement project, and the other being the Mount Washington Transit Tunnel rail replacement project. So I put a little bit of a legend on this slide to give you a little bit more of a visual, if you're a visual person, about how each of our construction projects impact our riders. So it's sort of two ways of looking at that. We have projects that are only impacting small, medium, or large numbers of riders. And then we have impacts to those riders, which sometimes are quite small and sometimes are very large, or you have to take two rides instead of one ride, very significant impact to your trip. So in pink, we have sort of the projects that impact your trip in a negative way, right? It's not just you're delayed a couple minutes. Okay, we can all handle a couple minutes delay. It happens, but maybe you're having to get off a train and get on a bus or something similar to that, or have a really big detour. And then we also had some projects over those last 2 years that impacted a lot of number of riders. So the pink with lots of stars are sort of the projects that are the most painful for us, most painful for our riders. And we have had a couple of those over the last 2 years that are thankfully now behind us, and we're happy to be moving on from. The great news is that in 2026 and in 2027, we do not have projects that are as impactful to such a large group of riders. So we do have some very big projects, and in some cases even bigger projects than the projects of the last 2 years. However, their impact to riders is not as great. So I'll just walk through what those are. So here we are in calendar year 2026. This is a calendar year summary. We have ongoing a cable replacement in downtown in our subway, and that is requiring weekend closures in a few of the stations in downtown here through this month and next. In January through March, so also an ongoing project. We are continuing with our rail grinding program. That's sort of a rolling program, so that impacts various locations and requires single tracking as the rail grinding moves through each section. We have 2 final weekend closures that will be needed in the Mount Washington Transit Tunnel for punch list items that were not able to be done over the winter with the weather being so cold. So things like the line striping, for example, if you do line striping in the middle of winter, you can't use the same high quality materials. So temporary materials are down for those, and those will need to be replaced with permanent materials that will last once the weather warms up a bit more. And then beginning this summer or late spring, we have the Mount Lebanon Tunnel rail replacement project beginning. That will be a single track project, and therefore so a smaller number of riders and a smaller impact to those riders, just a few minute delay in one direction while you wait for the other train to come through first. And then beginning in the summer, we have the Center Avenue Bridge rehabilitation. This is on our East Busway. So again, a minimal impact to riders while they wait a couple minutes in one direction on average for one bus to come through the single lane. In 2027, sorry about those stars on the top row there, we will again have our rail grinding program. We do that each winter. This is part of a 3-year program right now. So again, rolling single tracking through station areas for that. In March of next year, we will begin a very large project of rehabilitation on the Panhandle Bridge. This is the bridge that carries the light rail over the Monongahela River. So a very large project will impact a very large number of riders, but the impact to those riders will not be large. It'll be a few minutes delay in each direction, as only one train will be able, one track on the bridge will be open at any given time. We will also have some weekend closures, full closures of the bridge, but given that our light rail system is very largely commuter based, this is less of a major impact than a weekday closure. So huge project, but not a huge rider impact, even though it will impact lots of folks. A to be determined timeline, we have the Dormont Junction and Station Square station projects, which have been redesigned. We have the construction for those 2 projects upcoming. We're getting ready to bid those. And those will have single tracking, and for the most part, those stations will be able to remain open with sort of half the platform open at any given time. We may have occasional weekend closures for that, for both of those. Those could start this fall, actually, but perhaps more likely starting with the weather clearing next spring. And then beginning next year, we also will have a rehabilitation project for our Berry Street Tunnel, which is on the West Busway. And that will require many weekend closures. But again, our West Busway ridership is also quite commuter oriented. So for the most part, many riders won't be impacted by those weekend closures. So we're happy to have the past 2 years behind us. We're happy to be able to continue really focusing on our State of Good Repair program over the next 2 years, but with some projects that are, less painful to folks who are trying to get around. Just a summary here of how much we have been spending. Specific to some of the projects that were on the previous slides, we've been spending anywhere from $25 to $60 million annually on these projects, and we'll continue to do so over the next couple of years. Overall, our infrastructure spending includes other State of Good Repair projects not impacting service, as well as other capital improvement projects. And so there's a chart summarizing overall what we've spent over the last couple of years on this program. So lots happening, lots that will continue to be happening, lots more to do, and lots more capital to spend and get through as we continue to try and keep up with and maybe notch away a little bit at that pie chart of $2 billion. So that's it on capital construction. If I can answer any questions, happy to.
Any committee members have questions? Amy?
Hi, yeah, this is Bobby. Sorry to chime in again. Just I'm also relieved that there aren't any similar large construction projects upcoming. And I appreciated the graphic on rider impact. I wonder if there was a way to, we got a lot of rider feedback about the customer communications with detours, arrival times for detoured service, and trying to get that information. We've gotten feedback on how we're transitioning as platforms like Twitter or X, are less accessible to the public. I'm wondering if there's any major changes that we've done as far as communicating detours that have an impact that lasts, at any length of period from a day to weeks or months.
Yeah. Does anyone else like to take that one? I can high level, but I'll say something wrong. I'll just get it started and then Jim will add to whatever I've said incorrectly or missed. But broadly, from a planning perspective, our team in engineering, planning, communications, operations, scheduling, et cetera, is meeting monthly to look at all of these things. Whenever we can get a construction schedule into the scheduled picks, we are trying to do that, right? So especially anything that's going to last longer than a few months, we have found that, and you'll actually see that in the next presentation, we have found that that has the best impact, both for riders knowing what's coming and when, but also for maintaining ridership throughout that period, probably because people feel confident that they know what's coming and when. So that's really our aim on the planning end is getting those conversations far ahead enough that we can find ways to get things into the scheduled service changes. And then I'll let Jim add.
Good morning. I just to add on to what Amy said, the getting information into the PIC is important, obviously, because then riders can find that information in the normal places they look for their schedules and to figure out when to, get to the station and catch their trip. The other part of that is when it's not in the PIC and how we communicate that out. So we do have a team internally that works through that. They're assigned to all of Amy's projects, all of these kinds of projects, and they take those steps to try and communicate additionally. So they'll find other means to try and communicate with riders. In some cases, it's communicating with communities and neighborhoods that we're impacting by the work that we're doing. If we're doing a station project and it's going to have an impact in town, we make sure that we're sending out direct mailers to residents and businesses nearby. We're updating the local elected offices that work is coming to those communities. And then they also in turn help us because they then communicate that information through their own channels, and it helps, spread that information out. I know you're talking specifically about riders, and I think that is the key difference, is what gets into the PIC and what doesn't. And there is a, from a rider standpoint, there is definitely a difference in how you receive that information depending on that scenario. So as Amy said, the earlier we have that information internally to work with, the better. That's what we're all striving to do. I think our lessons learned in the past is when we don't do so well internally on that front, it complicates it publicly, that the information doesn't flow from the organization as smoothly as possible. So that's, I think, really been a focal point for us more recently, is to try and make that as efficient as possible.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would say, to me, the points that of feedback that came back that were most crucial were stop level communication, and then whatever was being pushed to transit feeds for folks looking at the schedules on their phones. Um, and then I think there remains a problem around where to go for sort of the final word or a centralized place for understanding what all the changes are happening. Again, the alternative for the public to something like a Twitter feed. But yeah, I appreciate you answering those questions.
Okay.
Sorry for one more question. It was just, I think this came up in previous discussions with the budget, but was there ever, this is more generally related to beyond just these construction projects, but was there ever an update on impacted capital projects due to the conversion of capital to operating funds and the long-term costs of that impact, or I don't know if that was ever presented or sent to the board, but I think I remember it being requested at some point.
Yes, our CFO will be providing a presentation on that, I think, in the Finance Committee meeting this morning. So hopefully we'll get all your questions answered on that after her presentation too.
Great. Is there any other questions from other board members? Not? Well, Amy, it
All
looks like you're up
I'll
again.
keep going. This one, we should have switched it up just so you weren't all falling asleep listening to me all morning. But this one is a every division presentation. Actually, I just got the right straw this month, but we may switch that up month to month. So starting off with a high level ridership overview on our fixed route system, which is bus, light rail, and incline. So I'm going to provide a very high level for today, and then our hope and plan is to come back monthly or bi-monthly to all of you and just give those updates of what we're seeing with ridership, what's happening in ridership, and where we're going with ridership in the future. So starting us off with the basics, how we calculate ridership, which is more complicated than you would think it is. We have something called APCs, which stands for automatic passenger counters. Those are infrared sensors on every door of the bus. We have them on light rail as well. They look a little different. They're a different system on the light rail mode, but same idea. And they basically count bodies as bodies get on and off of all of our doors of those modes. And so we pull data from that as our primary data source. However, we have audits done by two other data sources, our secondary data source being the fare boxes, right? So of course, pre-APCs, so back in the earlier 2000s and before that, we only calculated ridership with fare box taps or fare box counts. As you saw in the previous presentation, we sometimes have fare evasion on bus, so that can be a little bit less of a robust and full data set than the APCs. So we find the APCs to be much better at accounting for maybe there's a day that a fare box is broken or something like that, right? And that could really impact ridership. And then we also have our service development associate team, who I previously mentioned for auditing our fare evasion. They will also ride buses and trains and do formal counts. Those are actually required by the National Transit Database. That's a formal way that we have to ensure that however we are calculating ridership is audited and is working appropriately. So those sort of three systems together incorporate our overall ridership, with the APCs being our baseline that we used. And those APCs can get expanded for any missing data. When routes go on detour and other things like that, it can sometimes mess up the data that we are getting. So we broadly are sampling a large portion of the system, and then that system will expand out for any missing data sets. So high level ridership since the pandemic, we had a few board members ask about this recently, so we wanted to make sure we're providing some good information on that. So there's a lot on this slide, but I'll tackle each thing one at a time. So first, just starting with our service level since the pandemic. So we have on here fiscal 2019 being our baseline year, so we're calling that 100%. And then there's two line charts on the chart here that show how that has changed since the 2019 level. So our service was slowly decreasing over the first few years of the pandemic for a variety of reasons that we've talked about over the years. But the last 2 years, we have been able to inch that service level back up. So right now, by the end of fiscal year 2025, so June 30th, we were back at 89% of pre-pandemic service levels. That 11% that is missing was really a reduction on a lot of our commuter routes that occurred earlier on in the pandemic. And as we can see on the right side of this slide, our commuter routes really have not bounced back since the pandemic. And so it's a logical place for those service hours to have come from. So what has ridership been doing as those service levels inched down and kind of leveled off and have now been inching back up again? So the worst year, so the first year of the pandemic, or the first full year of pandemic impacts, Our ridership dropped by a little bit more than half, down to 47% of 2019 levels. Then actually dropped a little bit further the next year, down to 42% of pre-pandemic levels, and then crept back up in the 2 years following. So in FY23, we were at 61% of pre-pandemic ridership. We had a drop in fiscal year 2024, two major reasons for that drop. One being our rail projects, rail construction projects from the previous presentation. We had a pretty big rail ridership drop. And then also that was the first full year of the changes that we made to shorten 4 routes in the Oakland corridor as part of the university line work. And so we saw a reduction in ridership on our 71 series buses in that year as well. Moving into FY25, we were up a couple percentage points over FY24, and we are right now, as of the end of last fiscal year, which was about 8 months ago, at 59% of pre-pandemic levels. During this time, there's also on this chart some bars showing out of service. That was a continued challenge of ours that we have now thankfully addressed, but that can really impact ridership. Both reliability and on-time performance are major impacts to our ongoing riders and whether or not they're continuing to use the service or using the service more because they're relying on it and it's coming when they expect. So I did add that in there too because it just does help provide some other context for things that impact the system beyond just the level of service we provided. So I pulled at the bottom of the slide the average for the top 25 US cities for their ridership recovery as of the end of FY24. That data is about a year old, was at 67%. So we are below that national average. We are continuing to really be challenged both with our commuter routes and with light rail ridership recovery. And then some other areas like weekend bus ridership is above 75% recovery. So there are some areas where we've really rebounded well, other areas where we are struggling. So commuter routes in particular, many of them are at their baseline service levels. We're not providing frequent service on these commuter routes. So the more we pull away, the more riders we lose. It's another major reason that we're looking at the bus line refresh project to be able to reinvest those hours back into the system on places like Oakland routes, places like weekend service or evening service, midday service, where we know people are still riding and can get that growth back. And then just looking at the last calendar year, so I'm jumping to calendar year now just because it's a little less stale than fiscal year 2025. So if we look at the last 12 months or so, bus ridership is up slightly, about 3%, and that is showing up a bit throughout the system. So we're seeing some slight growth. Again, I noted that in fiscal 25, we did add a little bit of service back to the system. So it's not unsurprising that those ridership numbers are creeping back up. We also have addressed that out of service challenge so people know that their bus is going to come if it's scheduled to come. And then our calendar year 25 rail ridership was down significantly, even over calendar year 24, which had the red line closure. So again, construction projects are really impacting the rail system, and I have one more slide on that to follow. So light rail in particular, sort of touched on this already with the question about detours versus scheduling those changes, but we saw a major drop in ridership last January and February with the Plinth construction project in downtown. We knew that was going to be a painful one. There was not a way around that service-wise. We had to get the work done smack in the middle of the downtown subway, and people had to either walk a significantly further distance or hop on a bus shuttle at First Avenue Station to get where they were going, and that was very inconvenient for them. So that did significantly impact rail ridership for those 2 months. And then we had the tunnel closure. Through the tunnel closure for Mount Washington, we actually had steady ridership, which was a bit surprising to us. We thought we would lose a little bit of ridership because it was about an 8 or 9 minute delay for folks going through Allentown. However, I think because we got that into the schedules, because people knew when their trains were coming and their trains came when they said they were going to come, because we built that extra time into the schedules too, people, were happy to take a slightly longer ride to get where they were going because it wasn't really more complicated for them. So that's really a positive and a helpful lesson to us to the previous question about detours. And then, of course, that Mount Washington Transit Tunnel went beyond schedule. So we had 2 months there where our trains were back on their normal schedule, but still running on that detour. That meant that trains were running behind schedule. And if we get far enough behind schedule, we may have to put a trip out of service. And so once you start to get those missed trips, you start to really impact ridership too. So we have all these lessons, and we will continue to take these lessons into that future planning for projects that do impact service and making sure that we're getting things in the schedule when we can. So this data is open and transparent to all. So we do have at our website, rideprt.org, a ridership and on-time performance dashboard. You can drill in by route, you can drill in by day of week, by mode, whatever you would like to look at. So this is all open. Just wanted to remind the public that this is out there. So you're always welcome to dig in and ask us questions if you have any. So goals, we were asked to provide what our ridership goal was for this year. And then I have a slide talking about some high level for next year. So broadly, we did not have any major changes in the pandemic world, which has been an ongoing, of course, topic of study over the last 6 years. For ridership return, we were not expecting any major changes in FY26. We did project in our budgets a 1% increase in ridership broadly over fiscal year 2025. We knew we would have a decline on rail because of the major projects coming up. We assumed bus ridership would broadly be stable, perhaps slightly down with all the construction in Uptown and Oakland. We knew NFL draft was coming in April. We'd probably have a boost for about a week or so with ridership for that project. Our pass programs are continuing to roll out with a goal of 10 organizations on Partner Pass this year, and 7 new organizations signed up for job perks this year. So assuming small growth if those pass programs met their goals. And then we knew service-wise, we were not planning for significant growth in service hours, but adding time into schedules to improve on-time performance, and if possible, adding a couple trips here and there to help alleviate some overcrowding. So overall, we were looking for a 1% increase in FY26 over FY25. And so next time we present, we can provide an update of how FY26 is looking so far. In looking forward to FY27, we have a lot of positives coming, which is exciting. So we don't have an estimate for what ridership growth will look like yet, but we will get that to all of you by the time we begin FY27. So positives, we have some more return to office that has recently been announced that we're expecting in June in downtown. We don't have any major rider impact construction projects on rail. So the Panhandle Bridge will start, but again, a small impact to a lot of riders. So we don't expect that people will stop riding as a result of that. So we're hoping for rail to continue growing since FY26 had the tunnel project in it. For bus, the University line will continue under construction, so that may dampen Oakland ridership slightly, Uptown ridership slightly with that ongoing construction. We do have the Parkway East closing for 35 days this summer, so we are anticipating, at least on some of our eastern suburb bus routes, growth over that month, as well as our East Busway routes. The bus network changes, which could begin in FY27 for bus line refresh, the new name of bus line redesign, that could begin some ridership growth in FY27, depending on when we roll that out. We don't have a timeline for that established yet, but that we certainly are expecting ridership growth on that, and we are working on internally a ridership projection for growth for that project, which we should have by the next time we present to all of you on this topic. Pass trends, so continuing to partner with the county on Allegheny Go, Partner Pass job perks, and the University Pass programs. We expect continued slow growth in all of those areas. And then service-wise this fall, a focus on-time performance, and any overcrowding will continue to be our focus. So not expecting growth from that, but neutral focus on existing riders. All right, that was a lot. So any questions on ridership?
Yes. Does the committee have any questions for Ms. Silverman?
It's just Jen. I actually have a question. And Bobby, all of your questions were great, so I don't mind you asking a million questions. But I have a question about the counters that are on the buses. How will that be incorporated into the university line when there's multiple door boarding? The counters are, obviously another way to, audit or capture the number of people coming on, see if it matches the taps or and the money in the box. Well, when you're having multiple entry doors, will there be additional ones added on? How does that account for people leaving as well off the buses? It's just, can you go over that a little bit? Because you're experimenting a little bit with a different type of boarding on the university line. So how is that going to be worked in?
Yes, that's a great question. And luckily, this one we've already figured out and already do today. So the APCs are already on all doors of the buses. And actually, prior to maybe 2019, we had pay as you board and then pay as you get off if you were going outbound, right? We had like different payment methods depending on how you were riding the bus. It wasn't always pay as you board. And so these APCs are set up to understand the directionality of movement across the infrared sensor. So they know if someone's getting on or off, and they actually are designed to balance ons and offs on every trip. So if for some reason a trip shows 100 people got on the bus and only 50 people got off, it'll throw out that record. It might have been, someone standing with their backpack in front of the sensor for half an hour because they're standing in the doorway on their way home. And so the sensors are really good at handling ons and offs and calculating ridership accordingly. So it actually should not impact anything that we do. We shouldn't need to do anything differently with this new payment method on the university line with regards to ridership.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members have any questions?
Yeah, this is Bobby, and thank you, Jen, and everyone else for for listening to all the questions. But for this ridership update, I'm really appreciative at the level of detail, and excited to see also public-facing data that's being made available, because as you're saying, it is a lot of information. So I'm excited to hear, what additional feedback there is from the public. I oh my goodness, I had a question, but it just left my brain. So I will just I actually sorry, do recall now. Are there in terms of it seems like out of the different aspects of service right now, the area that there's the potential for most growth is around the past programs. Is there any changes in enrollments for those programs, or additional updates in terms of additional partners that we're hoping to sign on, or changes? I know there were changes being made to the program to make it easier for companies to sign up at more flexible, in terms of having a more flexible package, so to speak, in terms of I know there was some resistance with some of the requirements with that program.
Member Fan, this is Catherine. How about we bring you back an update at the next meeting so we can get something more comprehensive about where those past programs are?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Again, any other questions? Board members, I too like to encourage questions as well. That's why we have our committee meetings and updates. Any questions? If not, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication. Well, that's the end of today's agenda for this committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No, but Madam Chair, if you just note that I was in attendance, I couldn't get my microphone to work during the roll call. So thanks.
And whose voice is that?
I'm sorry, Chris Bersalis.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. May we please have a motion to adjourn this committee?
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn.
Okay, welcome to the Finance Committee meeting. Will members of the Finance Committee who are present please identify themselves?
Senator Williams.
Other board members?
Tom Bergender.
Horace Tohinky.
Stephanie Thurman.
Bobby Pan.
Chris Bursalis.
Jen Liptak.
Good morning, all. The minutes from the January 22nd, 2026 Finance Committee have been circulated. If there are no updates, corrections, comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve these minutes.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries. Today we have two presentations from Dominica Brown, the first being a capital budget update and then a review of the January financial statements. So I will let her take it away.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dominica Brown. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and this first presentation is an update on the capital budget impacts from the capital waiver and things of that nature. So this slide and the next few slides are kind of similar to slides that I presented in the past, but something that's coming later in the presentation is just more detail on exact projects that were impacted and a little bit more detail on what we've done. So because of the impending operating deficit and potential service cuts and fare increases, PRT took advantage of an opportunity to apply for a waiver from PennDOT, which was approved in order to use our capital dollars for this current fiscal year to support operating purposes. Whenever we looked at our capital projects that were budgeted in 2026 and then already underway and funded with prior dollars in previous years, we focused on reprioritizing our projects. We reviewed, obviously, safety considerations and wanted to make sure that safety was a priority. And we delayed funding projects based on actual cash demands. And some older projects may have had more cash that we knew we'd spend right away. So we were able to kind of borrow from those projects in order to continue moving forward with some of the projects that we saw as a priority, but also, be able to use these capital dollars for operating purposes. So this is a bit of a repeat of some of the things that Amy mentioned earlier today, but we have extensive capital needs, as we are all aware. Many of us use and travel the system, and we see some of the things that do need to be done on the system on a daily basis. We do currently have a $2 billion state of good repair backlog. And so whenever we consider the need for capital investment and the amount of dollars that we do have to invest in capital, each year there's this dance of what do we prioritize, what absolutely needs done right now, what is a safety consideration, and what are we able to not do right away in order to kind of be as efficient as we could considering the dollars that we do have. So whenever we took the $106.7 million that we were able to take from the state capital budget in this fiscal year and moved it into operating, we broke our projects into 4 categories in the ways that we use them. What I mentioned before is that we had some projects that may have had larger balances from dollars that may have been allocated to those projects in previous years, but haven't quite been spent yet. And this total $36.6 million. Whenever we took those dollars, we were able to still move forward with a lot of these projects that were underway, but realizing that we would not spend those dollars right away. There were $27.3 million in projects that were canceled. There were some of the examples of that. Well, this is actually the full list, but our diesel buses, there were some station improvements that were planned. We planned on expanding a park and ride lot and some other technology. And then $7.9 million in projects that were completed and awaiting final invoicing. we often keep a balance in a project until invoicing is completely done, and then we're able to repurpose those dollars. These were projects that were essentially finished, but we were still waiting for the final invoices to come in so that we could close out those projects and reallocate those dollars. And this is the list of projects that were deferred or pushed to future years. And it was $34.9 million for these projects. You do see that there were preventative maintenance on several bridges, west and eastern bridges, and light rail bridges. However, we do regular preventative maintenance on these bridges. We try very hard to stay ahead of the schedule. And in these instances, these are schedules that we created to stay ahead of, you know, emergent needs for the bridges. However, they are still safe, and it is totally fine for us to push off some of this preventative maintenance. So that list is the total list of projects that were impacted by the capital waiver. And just a review of the capital budget process and some of the things that we focus on whenever we're considering what projects are funded each year and things of that nature. We do know that due to, again, the need for state of good repair, as well as other improvements that we would like to accomplish in the coming years, that by taking capital dollars and using them for operations and also deferring projects, we are putting additional strain on the capital budget in future years. So we will continue to do an annual and even within each year reviews of what our projects are, what the needs are. Sometimes things change in the middle of projects, and we may need to give a project additional dollars than what was initially budgeted, or it can come other. So those are things that we are consistently doing throughout the year. But obviously safety, cash flow needs, strategic priorities, the community needs, and obviously compliance with how we're maintaining our infrastructure are things that are considered on a regular basis. Are there any questions?
This is Bobby. Um, and thank you, Dominica, for this presentation. And I didn't realize earlier when I asked that you'd already be presenting on this. Is there any estimate of the long-term additional impacts, particularly financial impacts of the transfer of this capital expenditure, or of delaying preventative maintenance or other types of upgrades, or um, uh, you know in my understanding that would have some sort of long-term impact on all those infrastructure related pieces and the vehicles themselves. So yeah, I'm curious if there's um, any estimate on that impact, especially as we're talking about continued funding.
Yeah, so we do realize that because we are delaying some projects and we realize that we already had an existing bottleneck on funding in the next few years, that this kind of cascades into further years. An example of that would be some of our goals around zero emissions and things of that nature, infrastructure needs that we would have to begin to have alternative fuel vehicles and the necessary infrastructure to support and fuel those vehicles. Some of those things probably will be delayed further out than initially anticipated. Also, because we're pushing out, our capital budget is not necessarily finite, but it is one that we are dependent on where our funding sources come from, and that is on an annual basis. So whenever we plan out in future years, we plan out based on what we can assume our funding would be, but we often don't know exactly what that funding would be until we're into that year, even after we approve the capital budget for the year sometimes. And so it's something that we're evaluating and reviewing and looking at each year. And as I mentioned before, we're constantly prioritizing and ranking our projects based on some of the things that I mentioned. And so it is a moving target, but we do see and expect that projects that we would have liked to get done sooner, maybe there are some technology projects, and even when we consider our new rail vehicles and things of that nature, we may have to make some decisions even in the future to make some changes in the timeline, or even if we're able to do certain things that may not be as important, particularly if a safety event comes up for a piece of our infrastructure, then obviously that would take priority. And so those things are always changing.
Okay. Yeah, no, essentially I'm wondering if there's a way to I know these things are hard to project, but if there's a way to summarize the potential impacts essentially of this change.
Mhm. A question.
Good morning, Bobby. It's Catherine again. That's an excellent question. Given that we have our backlog of state of good repair, what we historically do is cascade things further into it. To Dominica's point, it may take us longer to get to a full bridge rehab. Obviously, we're not going to operate on a bridge that is unsafe, but we can look at ways of capturing there's little things like the Panhandle Bridge. When we first started pricing out the Panhandle Bridge rehab project in 2020, had we not had a pandemic, we would have taken that out to bid. And the ICE at that time was 55 million. The total now for the entire project is closer to 90 million because we didn't get that out until 2024. So we do have examples where we can show delays in bids at compound projects. We also have really great information from the maintenance group. And I know Don loves giving presentations, but we have really great information from maintenance on what happens on deferral. So for instance, on the bus side, you see that we were not proceeding forward with a purchase of 30 articulated vehicles. We're doing that in conjunction with fleet retirements. That's a different impact to us than if we didn't buy 30 and we decided to keep our vehicles longer, another 3 years. It has a much bigger maintenance impact. So there are a bunch of different ways that we slide this and we estimate on that. So let us think of some ways, and that might be just an update that we can get out either generally on the website to help folks understand that impact. So it's one of those of you live with the money that you have. There are definitely impacts of having to wait on things, but they're sort of varied and like in a sliding scale of what you can and can't. Like not spending the dollar this year is not a 100% loss of that dollar this year, but the downrange effects are going to vary based on the kind of project that was. So let us put our heads together, see what we can do to try to capture that to make that easier to understand.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think it was answered. It was along the lines of, my question was along the lines of preventive maintenance as it relates to unseen things, rather weather that we just went through and how
Yep.
the budget, we can utilize some of our fundings for quick turnarounds and communities that are impacted on schedules and getting back up and going on schedule. So I think you pretty much already answered the question, unless you want
No.
to. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Alrighty. Okay. Alrighty. Well, if there are no further questions, I will move into the review of the financial statements. Monthly passenger revenues, when we look at January, it is lower than we've expected. Each year, you do see that there's a dip in January ridership. Revenue. However, we are not quite sure yet of the exact reason as to why it's lower than expected, but we are looking into that. Revenues for the month of January are on the nose with budgeted. It's only about a $16,000 difference. However, as you can see, fares is still below what was budgeted, but interest income and other income have made up that difference, particularly advertising income. Expenses for the month of January are $4.2 million below what was budgeted, which is a good thing. Most of the reason for that is still wages and benefits due to lower insurance costs, health insurance costs, as well as vacancies. Subsidies for the month of January are about $1.5 million above what was budgeted, and that is due to vehicle overhaul invoicing. In the year to date, so for the first 7 months of the fiscal year, we have about $1.9 million in revenue in excess of the budgeted amount. Again, you notice that fares and access are below budgeted. However, interest income is about $2.7 million above what was budgeted for this fiscal year. Expenses for the January year to date are $29.3 million below budgeted, with every expense category coming in below what we budgeted. Subsidies for the month of January are about $700,000 below what we budgeted. That is primarily due to lower capitalizations. When we look at operating reserves, we began the month of January with $378.2 million. There were $48.1 million in cash inflows for the month. Outflows for the month were $49.3 million, and the month was ended with $377 million in operating reserves. And that is the end of the financial statement review. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay, if not, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good morning. I will now call to order the Performance Oversight Committee. Will other committee members please identify yourselves?
Senator Forrest Williams. Sohinki.
Other board members?
Emma Schuker.
Jen Liptak?
Chris Bursalis.
Bobby Fan.
The minutes of the January 22nd, 2026 meeting have been circulated. Unless there are any questions, may I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now have proposed resolutions, first beginning with the awarding of bids by Justin Cava.
Thank you and good morning, committee members. I have two items today for your consideration. The first item is bid number B250965. This is for the rental of restroom trailers. These will be utilized by PRT's bus operators at specific locations throughout PRT system. The picture that you see is an example of one of the trailers that we will be utilizing for the service. And these will only be utilized by PRT personnel only. They will not be available to the public. 422 suppliers were notified of the bid opportunity. 4 suppliers accepted the invitation. 4 bids were received. The recommendation that a contract be awarded to Austin Logistics LLC in the estimated amount of $836,480. The contract duration will be over a 2-year period with no renewal options. The second item is bid number B2511-79. This is for the purchase of 115-pound steel rail. This is utilized by PRT's way department in the maintenance repair of the light rail vehicle tracks. The picture that you see here is the actual 115-pound rail that's stored at our Haberman yard. We do purchase these in 39-foot increments. 521 suppliers were notified of the bid opportunity. 2 suppliers accepted the invitation. 2 bids were received. Recommendation that award be awarded to LB Foster Company in the estimated amount of $135,309. This contract duration will be over a 6-month period with no renewal options. Any questions or concerns with these 2 bids?
Do any board members have questions regarding the 2 bids?
Yeah, this Chris Bursalis, the previous, how many trailers are we renting?
I believe we're looking at 4.
Are there any
Seems like-
further questions?
Yeah, I need to look into that a little bit more. Okay, thank you.
Okay, subject to any further questions, I respectfully request these bids be taken to the board for full approval.
Do any other board members have questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to move these 2 awarding of bids to the full board?
Motion.
Second.
Any opposed? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm sorry. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Cava.
Thank you.
We will now have Greg O'Hare present a proposed resolution to award a construction contract.
Good morning. This resolution seeks authorization to award construction contract SYS 2506 for Berry Street tunnel improvements. The scope of work generally consists of tunnel exhaust fans, cabling, conduit, electrical support systems, tunnel fire hydrants, temporary traffic control, and tunnel fire detection and alarm system. To the right for illustration is a picture inside the tunnel looking up towards the tunnel exhaust fan, one fan example highlighted in red, also showing the cabling and conduit that's attached to the tunnel fan. This slide has two pictures on it. On the left-hand side is a typical existing fire hydrant within the tunnel. This picture, you could see the tunnel fire hydrant is in poor condition. On the right-hand side is an aerial view of the location of the tunnel. The Berry Street Tunnel is along the West Busway. The West Busway in the aerial view is highlighted in yellow. The tunnel itself is about 3,000 feet between Sheridan and Ingram stations, and it's highlighted in red on the aerial view. On this particular slide to the right is another picture for illustration purposes. Inside the tunnel, towards the top of the tunnel, looking at the existing conduit and hanger system. Here again, you can see the conduit and tunnel hanger system is in poor condition. The project duration is 780 days from notice to proceed. We anticipate the project completion in 2028, so it's approximately 26 months long. The contractor is Thoroughbred Construction Group, LLC, with a bid of $11,693,000. Pending any questions, I respectfully request the committee approve this resolution for full board consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. O'Hare. Do any board members have questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to move this to the full board?
So moved.
And I'll take that as a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Does anyone oppose? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting for today. Do any board members have questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, meeting adjourned.
I'd like to call the Technology Committee meeting to order. A roll call of members of the committee.
Chris Bursalis.
Bobby Fan.
Members of the board. Tom Bergender.
Tia McClenny.
Jen Liptak. Laura Stohinky.
Now I'd like to talk about the approval of minutes of the January 22 Technology Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. The Technology Committee has several resolutions for your consideration today and a presentation. So get strapped in for quite a meeting. The first resolution is a proposed resolution authorization to enter into a second amendment to a limited access tunnel license agreement with Pittsburgh SMSA Limited Partnership, also known as Verizon Wireless, for multi-carrier distribution of antenna system. And I'd like Mike Cetra to make this presentation.
Yes, good morning, Committee Chair Bergender, committee members, and other board members. This resolution that I have for the committee's consideration this morning would authorize PRT to enter into a second amendment to its existing license agreement with Verizon Wireless for a multi-carrier distributed antenna system. In July of 2018, PRT's board authorized PRT to enter into the original MDA system agreement with Verizon for Verizon to install, operate, and maintain at no cost to PRT, and for an annual license fee paid to PRT for use of PRT property, a multi-carrier distributed antenna system that allows PRT patrons with Verizon cellular data plans or with a cellular data plan of any other cellular carrier who opts to join the MDA system to utilize their cellular telephones, I would say more reliably, because of the coverage that's provided by the system, well inside PRT's downtown and North Shore light rail stations and well inside PRT's light rail tunnels. In January 2021, the MDA system agreement was amended when AT&T joined the system to provide more reliable cellular network coverage to AT&T cellular customers. PRT and Verizon representatives over the past few months here have negotiated the proposed terms of a second amendment to the MDA system agreement that would expand the MDA system cellular network coverage to also include PRT's Mount Washington Tunnel, further adjust the annual license fee that Verizon pays to PRT for use of its property from $30,746.85 to $33,746.85 with an annual 1% fee escalation. And AT&T or any other carrier that opts to join the MDA system in the future and include the Mount Washington Tunnel in their cellular coverage area would pay similar fees adjusted based upon the date they actually enter onto the system. This amendment would also extend the term of the MDA system agreement through December 31st, 2025, with 2 additional 5-year renewal options subject to termination for breach or convenience provisions provided for in the original MDA system agreement. This resolution would authorize PRT to proceed with finalizing and executing the second amendment to the MDA system agreement with Verizon, consistent with the terms that I just described, and otherwise in a form approved by PRT legal counsel. And I should also note, Verizon's still going through final approvals on their end, so we would need their final approval on their end as well if the board approves it for PRT to proceed. Subject to any member questions, I will respectfully request that the Technology Committee recommend this resolution to the full PRT board for approval.
Do I have a motion to take this resolution to the board?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions?
This is Bobby. I do have a quick question. Is this separate from, Mike, you were saying this is for rider benefit, but is this not also, is this related to connectivity for our own buses in terms of the data that we're getting from the buses? It's, also related to customer information in terms of getting the bus locations.
Yes, it does help. It helps on the rail side. I'm looking at Mr. Devlin here, but he's confirming for me that on the rail side, it also improves connectivity for our data network as well.
Okay, I was just asking because I know that people complain about buses that disappear from their trackers all the time, and I understand that to be related to cellular coverage, so that's why I wanted to ask.
Yes, Mr. Devlin's confirming this does help with that further.
Do we have any additional questions? All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now, Jeffrey Devlin has a couple of other resolutions to bring to the board, so I'm going to ask him to describe those resolutions consecutively.
Thank you and good morning. I'd like to thank Mike for bringing the Verizon thing, and especially Josh Banyas, who's been shepherding this project for a few years now. We'll be excited to see the Mount Washington Tunnel lit up with some networking. So I have a couple good resolutions for you today. Unfortunately, you are getting the B team today. April Weitzel, who is our Director of Data Analytics, really wanted to present this. resolution to you this morning. Unfortunately, she's unable to be with us, so you're stuck with me. So our first resolution is an authorization to enter into an agreement for RFP 25-22 for transit ridership data analytics. We've been using software from Clever Devices for about the past 7 to 8 years called RideCheck Plus. And Clever has decided that RideCheck Plus is being sunsetted. It goes away essentially between June and December of this year when you look at the end of support. And it's really important. This data that is produced and analyzed really affects our funding levels. It goes to the FTA in something called the National Transit Database, where we do annual reporting. And as I mentioned, it's tied to our funding allocation. Clever Devices does have another product to replace RideCheck Plus, which we did look at. We did decide to go out on the street and look at the competition, as it were, that was out there. We received 8 different proposals for this, and the committee worked their way through those. And in the end, our recommendation is with the firm called Corbato. We actually have prior experience with Corbato as they've been working with our Masabi system over the past 5 or 6 years also in helping us do some data analytics. So the estimated total of this project for the first 3-year period is $833,423. And that also has 2 option years built in as we need to continue that project. So subject to any questions from the board or the committee, I would respectfully request that this be taken to the full board for approval. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from board members? Hearing none.
Yes,
Go ahead.
this is very, I know there were previous changes or discrepancies in ridership numbers with system changes. Is there any potential impact in switching systems in terms of the ridership numbers that we'd be seeing?
We will be undergoing a very extensive parallel process to make sure that we are getting accurate results as we make this transition. About 8 years ago, we had a similar one from a company called UTA when we switched to RideCheck Plus, went through a process at that time. I assure you we will be undertaking a very rigorous process to ensure that we are getting accurate ridership numbers moving forward.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to take this resolution to the board?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Jeffrey, do you want to continue?
Yes, thank you. Another good one is this is to amend an agreement that is existing with WWT Incorporated, which is doing business as VoIP for our phone system update. So back in November 2024, about 14 months ago, the board approved the initial project with VoIP networks on a 3-year term with 2 option years. As we are working our way through this implementation, we're finding this is a good time to take care of a couple other features with our phone system. So this amendment will enable us to do these at this time as part of this project. It's to add some additional equipment at a few locations, add some software so that we can run the old system and the new system in parallel as we activate it. A big aspect of this is our interactive voice response system. You may not be familiar with IVR, but I guarantee everyone in this room has endured one of those. That is when you call any company and it says press 1 for this and press 2 for that, press 4 for that, and has additional features on it. We knew that there was a base IVR system built into the VoIP, and we were excited about that. As we got further into it and customer service asked for some additional features, was looking at going for a more broad scale IVR, we found that VoIP was able to actually do some of these features for this. And they include things like potential for trip planning, checking your balance on your Ready Fare card, et cetera. So we're excited to roll this into this project as it actually saves us a significant amount of money if we were to go out the street for a wholly separate IVR. And finally is a bit of a technical connection transition, and that's moving from a PRI to SIP. This is something that Verizon has been working on for some years, of getting companies to switch from a legacy connection system, which was called PRI, to move to SIP. Don't ask me what those initials mean because I don't know. So the request here is to amend this agreement to the increase not to exceed by $500,000, which would bring it to $1,500,000. Again, keeping with the existing 3-year term with the 2 option years. Subject to any questions from the committee or board, I respectfully request that this be taken to the full board for approval. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the board? Any discussion? Do I have a motion to carry this resolution to the board?
Motion.
We had 2 comments, so I'll take the second as a second. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Well, Jeffrey's not done. Now he has a presentation to make.
Yes, I'm actually going to present you with the appetizers, and Jim Ritchie's going to bring the meat and potatoes on the Ready Fair update. So from a technology standpoint, we're in really good shape. We are in the comms good shape also. I don't want to diminish that. But just to give you a real quick high level look at that, the Ready Fair cards are in stock and ready for distribution. That'll start happening later this year, and Jim will be talking about that. The app updates that we need to make to Ready to Ride have been completed and installed, ready to go. The fair vending machines have actually been delivered also. We are holding off on starting to deploy the fair vending machines until 4/29. I understand there's something big happening in the city the week before, and at the risk of doing a transition and creating chaos out there, we decided to hold off on the fair vending machine deployment until 4/29, and that'll complete at the end of June. We've also kicked off the project to be able to accept credit cards on this new system. That is tentatively going to go live in July of this year. We'll have our new fare boxes piloting in November. So that'll allow a nice long transition time for folks to move from their Connect card over to the Ready Fare card. And then the new fare box install will occur next year. Again, reiterating that nice long transition time for folks to move away from Connect card to the Ready Fare card. With all that said, the meat and potatoes here is really on the communications and how we'll help our riders make that transition. So I yield the floor to Jim Ritchie.
Good morning again. I was at this committee in fall, and we looked at the Ready Fair campaign, the promotional materials that will be used through this year as we transition from our Connect card system to the new Ready Fair system. And that was really more of a high level look. And today we have a little bit more detail and information to share with you. Really, this is a change in the card that people use to pay to ride in our system. Today, more than 60% of our riders use the Connect card. About a third use the mobile app, and about 2/3 use the card. So this change is going to impact all of our card-based users across our system. There are a lot of benefits with that, and we'll be communicating that. The campaign really will span the greater portion of the entire year. Right now, we're in a very early awareness phase, the ready phase. As Jeffrey noted, we're not really making those specific rider changes until later in the year and after the NFL draft event, so we don't complicate that process for people trying to get around and visiting. And then there will be some changes later in the year. So I'm going to walk through what to expect and what that campaign is going to look like, some of the visuals that you're going to see, especially in the PRT system and all of our advertising and promotional spaces online for sure. And for riders, the materials that they'll be receiving directly from us at home, the materials that will help them walk through this change in a simple fashion. The campaign, as I mentioned in fall, is really based on 3 phases: ready, set, go. It's really simple. It's awareness, then the change, and then if you haven't made the change, it's time to make the change because the old system is going to go away eventually. And if you use the Connect card, you will have to adjust with that. The process that we've developed is very much a proactive approach. If you are a registered Connect card user, you are going to receive something from PRT directly through email, through direct mail. We are going to contact you and put this information in front of you so that you know exactly what to do to make that change. To request the card, we will then send the card directly to you with information about how to create that new account. That is a key piece of it. It's not just a new card, it's a new account. So if you have funds in your Connect card account, at that time, you'll either want to use them up or shift them over. And so we have, a process for that as well. People really don't have to ever come into our service center to make this change. They can do all of this from home. And if they need help, our customer service staff will be trained on how to help people walk through any one of those steps. And they can do that online or by calling into the call center. Of course, this change really helps to align our mobile pay app, the Ready to Ride app, with the card. They're both going to be based off the same account, whereas right now the Connect card is a different account than the mobile Ready to Ride app. So this is also an opportunity for people who do not use the mobile app to consider it. And we'll be promoting that along the way throughout the campaign, trying to, show people the benefits of using the app and how simple it is. But of course, with about 2/3 of our system using that card, the card changes are the focal point of the campaign this year, just to make that as seamless and simple as possible for our riders. Okay. Big red slide. Ready is the first phase. This is our awareness phase. And it really has kicked off in January with some very early pieces. And it's going to span until June. And June is the time point that Jeffrey just alluded to when the equipment in our system that people would use and rely on to manage their cards, to add more value to their cards, whether those are, primarily vending machines that we have at our stations and across our system. We also have a retail network, and our retailers are making this change along with us. And we're providing that material, the training materials for them. So those will all be in place after the draft. We didn't want to be midstream during the draft with the equipment changes. But somewhere in June, that equipment will all be in place, and that's when we're going to cue riders to really make that change. That's when anyone who sees this information during the awareness campaign between now and then, they might receive something at home and they're going to request that new Ready Fare card. We will send it to them closer to that June date. So when they get the card, we're going to be really close to this point in time where we'll have all the equipment and the structure in place to support them moving forward. These are some of, obviously some of the visuals, just mock-up samples of the types of things that this awareness campaign will look like in our system, online. We'll be using primarily, at first, assets we own. Display ads in our stations across our system and our service center, Take One cards on vehicles, the overhead cards that are above riders when they're sitting in a vehicle. We're going to have some big display items like a wrapped bus or two that you can't miss with that color, and information online through our social media channels. And as I said before, I think it's on the next slide. It wasn't. I thought it was. Sorry about that. Very significant direct mail campaign and email campaign as well. We have a lot of information, a lot of data from our registered customers, and we can reach them directly with this information. We wanted to mention this. We're a large employer. We have a lot of employees, and they're often willing to be ambassadors for the kinds of changes we make in our system. And that's not just customer service, that spans to people who work in our divisions, our bus operators, our rail operators, people out and about in the community. And the more information they have about these changes, the more they can help spread accurate, reliable information. And so we started in December with our employees and gave them what we call the Ready Fair Field Guide. And it has a lot of this detail in there so that they could understand what was happening and what was changing. And then hopefully, you know, when they have opportunity to share that with others. I mentioned before about 2/3 of our system is card-based. We have a lot of different rider programs. So we're reaching people uniquely through the program that they're a part of. We have annual pass holders, reduced fare programs. We have a special Allegheny Go partnership with Allegheny County, and that's a custom rider base. We have our senior citizen card network and other pass programs like Job Perks and Partner Pass. And so the point there is this really isn't a one size fits all campaign. This is really a series of individual campaigns. They all have individual content, materials. They're all on individual timeframes based on what works best for each one of those rider groups. So while the awareness phase is really a mass awareness approach to the visibility of the change that's coming, the actual change is very unique to the rider group that's involved. There's that slide I was looking for earlier. So we do have the ability to reach our registered riders today directly. And so they will receive, if they are registered, they're going to receive something directly in the mail from us that really gives them the information they need to take that first step and request the card. And the same with email. Sometimes we have the mailing address and sometimes we have the email, but they're both very proactive ways to initiate that contact. When we get to June, the point in time that Jeffrey had alluded to earlier after the NFL draft, and that equipment is installed, that's really when we're going to make sure people have those cards. So we don't want to send them out too early. That's why we're not going to be sending cards out, say, next month. But as we get closer to this date, we will be sending that information to them. This is what they will receive at home, a cardholder brochure. It will have the card inside and specific instructions on how to set up your account. And it should be clear and simple. If not, customer service will be trained on how to help and assist with that. So if you get this and you can't figure it out, our staff will be able to walk you through that and make sure your account is set up properly for you. But this is really going to hit in that June timeframe, just ahead of well, I should say right when that equipment is being installed, and we know it's going to be there to support the ridership once we reach this point. Wanted to note our community outreach team will be out and about all spring and summer, literally every event that they will be at throughout the county. They will have cards with them. They have a unique tool that they'll be handing out. It's a Z-Pack. It's a wallet-sized pack that has the card in it. It unfolds. It has the same information in it on what to do at that point. If you have the card, you can then take that, go home, set up your account, call customer service if necessary. And but they will be reaching people in a very different way, not digitally, not through the direct channels, but at the events that we get to participate in throughout the year. The final phase is the go phase. And really at this point, we're making sure people know if they didn't already get a new card, if they didn't make the change, that time is going to run out on them at some point. For one, starting September 1st, we will start charging $1 for any cards at that point. During the rollout campaign, the cards will be free. But September 1st, we would start charging. And as Jeffrey noted, at some point, the fare boxes on our vehicles will change out, and that may not happen until later in the year or early next year. But this is sort of the last chance campaign. This is that prompt to go get it if you haven't done so already. I will have more analytics at this point too, so we'll have a good sense as to how much of our ridership has made the change, and if we can target any specific audience that may be behind the positive trend, we can target them specifically too. That is just a look on this slide of on the right, especially the vending machines that we've talked about a couple times here today, and also the on-vehicle validator that is different than the fare box that people use today for the Connect card. So that just fundamentally will be a big change for riders to know. You tap on the validator and not on the fare box going forward once that change is made. I did want to note senior cards, very specific rider group for us. And we use a unique network where we partner with a number of our legislative offices across our system, which works wonderfully. Just wanted to note here today that we are not going to transition our senior card riders until after the other changes with all the other rider groups. So we're going to go through, the full fare, the reduced fare audiences first. And I think in about fall, we're going to focus on our senior transition. The legislative offices, the letter that you see on the right of this screen will be going out to our partners at the legislative offices to make them aware of this intention, just the time frame involved for them, and to start providing some information that they could consider using with their constituents and with their offices. We're also going to reach our senior riders directly as well through the channels we have. We'll be updating groups like the Area Agency on Aging and so forth, so that they have this information in hand, and just try to make sure people know if you use a senior card today, you can continue using it. And even if the equipment happens to change on you somewhere along the way, you can continue using it as a flash pass until we get to this point where we make that change for you. And that is an update on the materials that we're going to be using publicly. I'm happy to answer any questions for you. And I am not the subject expert in every one of these categories, so I have a small army of people here today to help if you have any tricky questions for me.
Jim, I have a question. With regard to the senior program, does PRT maintain a database of addresses for those people so that they'll be sending out correspondence directly to those people, or will they have to rely on communications from their legislators?
No, we do. We have a database for all of our rider groups. It's usually a question of how much information is in there. So we want to do more than just rely on the databases we have, whether it's the senior database or our full fare Connect card users, for instance. We want to try and communicate over a number of channels to make sure we're hitting people in different ways. But yes, for seniors specifically, we do.
Well, taking a statement from Amy, this is big impact, number of people impacted, big change. Any questions from the technology committee members?
Yes, I have one question. Thank you for this presentation. One of the questions I had is when we had the legislative briefing a few weeks ago, I know legislators were quite concerned about the confusion that this could cause, and they just wanted to be able to be a partner with PRT in providing this information to constituents, especially seniors who might see the news and get worried that they won't be able to ride the bus with their pass. So thank you for making sure that these materials go out to legislators. I would also echo a request for some sort of lunch and learn small briefing for the staff of legislators' offices, who my staff does a great job, but they do the lion's share of the work of when people come into the office concerned, and that they have done, hundreds, if not thousands, of these senior bus passes. So if we can also have some sort of briefing for legislative staff on what the timeline is and how to answer questions, I think that would help even stem some questions that come to PRT.
That's great, and thank you for that. We would love to do that, have a training session for staff, and I know we can schedule that. In addition, and specifically coming out of that briefing, some of the takeaways, there's a number of items going on right now between this and the NFL draft and so forth that are of interest, not just, broadly in the public sphere, but also for our elected offices. We're next week starting just a newsletter to elected offices that provides updates on each one of these changing topics. So it's not to replace any other form of communication with your offices, but just to keep you updated. And with that, a link back to an online resource page where we're gonna house all of the information, all the documents you saw, for instance, in this presentation. And in that staff briefing, we would point that out, that it's always there and available for people to use and reference as they need to. So we're just trying to provide more opportunity to make that work better.
That's great. Thank you. The more information, the better. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is Bobby. In looking at the timeline, I have some concerns in just what seems to be an ambitious timeline with both the installation phase, understandably not wanting to confuse riders during the NFL draft, but then also having a pretty short window after receiving the card to transitioning off of the Connect card. So I'm curious if there's any chance of, to me, there's different stages. It would be good to have a date for when Connect card vending machines will no longer be vending new cards. But then I think that should be a different date from when the fare boxes will no longer be accepting Connect cards, if that makes sense. To me, the earlier you can roll out the previous transition, and the later the more time that you give people to transition off of it, the better. One other thing with the marketing, I think it would be, I didn't see a lot of promotion of, there was just a quick mention of allowing credit card payments or contactless payments. I think that actually would, it's obviously a benefit to the new system. And if that would to be better advertised, I'm sure that I actually bring, maybe more ridership or folks who find it now easier to pay. Uh, so I don't know if that could be more emphasized. But yeah, overall, to me, the most important thing is having the most amount of time in which there's an overlap between when the new card is available, and then when, essentially it's no longer usable, and to have like a pretty concrete date communicated to folks so there isn't maybe conflicting information or the sky is falling kind of panic about that.
No, thank you for that. I'll I'll take a stab at that answer, and I know Jeffrey's going to pull me off if I start messing up. But I think you've just described the ideal marketing scenario where every date is carved in stone and it never changes. And so I think we agree with you completely. The more we can make that sequence happen in that way, the easier it's going to be for people to adjust and change with the system. It's just a very complex project, and the layers that the project team has had to move through, everything from technology side to equipment installations, and then managing other things going on in our communities, not just the draft. There's good and bad times to make some of those changes, and then trying to attach that internal process around it and the marketing on top of it becomes difficult. So the approach we took was for the marketing pieces to basically work in a fluid way, that there were phases, and we knew that within the phases, these dates could change. They could be affected by things, sometimes out of our control. But we didn't want to carve into stone a marketing plan that was so rigid that we couldn't adjust on the fly because something didn't happen on a specific date. So I think ideally, I'm saying, yes, we would want to have done it that way. I think the way we're doing it, we're trying to get to as close to that as possible. So it's not really up to the customer to know whether or not, for instance, the vending machines are in place and working. We're not going to send them cards unless we know that's going to be the case. So we're really just building into the sequence. That burden becomes our burden. But it helps us adjust with that fluid nature of some of these pieces that we've had to move through. The credit card question specifically, yes, that initially, with an earlier rollout, we would have built in the credit card as one of the options in our materials. And initially, it wasn't going to be available when we were intending to roll all this out. Now it's obviously in the middle of this time frame, so we have to add it in. I think we're going to just promote that separately and on top of the change materials that are going out. Fundamentally, for me at least, I view this initially as a change process. We need to make the change happen well. It needs to be smooth for people so they're not confused. And then we can promote on top of that after that later. There's a number of benefits of this change that we're going to want to call attention to. But the goal for us initially is just to make the change go smoothly. I agree, though, the credit card piece will be attractive and a piece of that change for some people. So we're going to have to find a way to fit that in. But that's why you didn't see it in the presentation today. But it will be there.
Any other questions?
I had a question. I'm sorry. Bobby, did you want to go first? You can.
I was just going to ask if the new fare box will be installed alongside the old one.
Oh.
Hi, this is Jeffrey again. The new fare box will be replacing the existing fare box. So as of May, we will be putting the new fare vending machines out. Folks will be able to start using their new Ready Fare cards. That's as of May. As of June, we will stop distributing Connect cards. However, we will continue to accept them on the bus and rail until really November at the very earliest, mostly Q1 of next year. So once folks switch over to their Ready Fare card, starting in June, July, they'll be able to just use that on the validators on the bus. If folks still have a Connect card, they will continue to be able to use that until November and Q1. November will be just, bless you, November we'll be doing a small pilot on a couple of buses, and then Q1 is when we'll be replacing the Connect card fare boxes with the cash only fare boxes. So we're really, to answer your earlier question, Bobby, leaving a really nice long lead time for folks to continue to use up their Connect card, to replace it out with a Ready Fare card. They will have from really June through essentially November, December to take care of that. So we wanted to make sure we left as long of a lead time as possible for folks to make that shift from the old Connect card to the Ready Fare card. To answer your direct question, though, we will be replacing the current Connect card fare boxes with the cash only fare boxes in the same place.
Thank you.
I had two questions. First is with the advertisement for the new system, which is a great opportunity to remind people about how wonderful it is to ride the bus system, how great we are, et cetera. There's different forms of advertisement. Were we planning on using any type of, I know this sounds very old school, I'll say, television advertisement, as in like cable channels, et cetera. They can be not as expensive, of course, as the major networks, but with some of the other streaming services, you can get, put a video up there. It's another way to imprint. Again, we have to look at, I guess, the cost, assuming, what the budget is for all that, but it's another way to imprint and get the message out there for how great our system is and the changeover. Is that incorporated in, Jim? And if not, it's not a big deal. I thought I would ask.
No, that's actually just a really good topic, and I won't deep dive on it. There are more affordable opportunities like that these days. 10 years ago, as you know, the cost of buying television space and producing that would have been astronomical for us, and really probably tripled my annual budget. But we're not planning it, to answer your question here. No, it's not a core piece of this change right now. We do more video work in-house now and through our consultants. So the opportunity to do that going forward is there. And that's something we'll need to explore more. I agree. It is a more affordable, accessible opportunity for us.
Thanks, Jim. The last question that I have is, and I apologize if you guys have answered this before, how do we handle the credit card fees? I think, having multiple ways to get on our system is fantastic. And I applaud all of the efforts that have been done to allow for every way, from cash to phone, whatever. But how do we handle the fees to the credit cards? Is it just incorporated into the system, or is there an add-on when people use a credit card, assuming it's not attached to a bank account? It's usually bank accounts are a little bit different.
Yes, the fee that the rider pays will be consistent at the $275 for the 3-hour ride, regardless of how they pay, whether it's on Ready to Ride, Ready Fare, or using their credit card. We will not pass that charge on to our riders for that credit card fee.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Well, that concludes the technology report. I told you it was going to be long. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any final discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the meeting today.